All right, today we're diving into a really fascinating and honestly pretty challenging question right at the heart of Christian theology. It all springs from two massive commands that Jesus gives. One is to love God, and the other is to love, well, to love Him. So, how do those two fit together? And really, the whole thing boils down to this one single question. It seems pretty straightforward on the surface, but the answer has some pretty huge implications. Can you genuinely say you love God if you don't also love Jesus? Let's unpack that. And here's where you can really feel the tension. On the one hand, Jesus confirms the single greatest commandment, to love God with absolutely everything you've got. But then, on the other hand, he makes the staggering claim that your love for him has to be greater than your love for your own parents or even your own kids. So, what do you do with that? How do these two commands possibly coexist? So let's tackle our first big question. What is the actual relationship between loving God and loving Jesus? The way this is framed in our source material is that one of these loves actually serves as the ultimate litmus test for the other. And listen, this isn't just some dusty theological debate. It has very real-world applications, especially in conversations with other faiths. The question often comes up, hey, don't we all just worship the same God anyway? Well, the argument we're looking at today draws a very, very sharp line in the sand on that one. And here it is. This is that line. And think about who Jesus is saying this to, the most religious, devout, Bible-believing leaders of his day. And he looks them in the eye and essentially says, all your claims to love God, they don't hold up because you don't love me. Wow. So your love for Jesus becomes what's described as the litmus paper for whether you truly love God. It's not just one factor among many. It's presented as the single make or break test. Do you embrace Jesus for who he says he is? That's the question. So the big takeaway from this first part is simple but profound. The argument is that these two loves are completely intertwined. You just can't have one without the other, period. Loving Jesus is how you prove you love God. And if you truly love God, you will inevitably love Jesus. Okay, so that leads us to our second question. If we're commanded to love Jesus in this ultimate way, what is that love really? What does it look like? Is it just a matter of, following a bunch of rules? Now, a lot of people will point right to this verse and say, see, love is just obedience. It's not a feeling. It's an action. It's about doing what he said. But the material we're looking at today really, really pushes back on that idea. This gets to a really critical point. Is love just an action, or is it also an affection and emotion? The source we're looking at argues that it's a huge mistake to think emotions can't be commanded. The Bible is just filled with commands to feel things, to fear, to hope, to rejoice, to be thankful. And here's where the grammar is actually a huge deal. The verse doesn't say love is keeping my commandments. It says, if you love me, then you will keep my commandments. See the difference? Love isn't the action itself. It's the root, the deep foundational cause, and obedience is the fruit that grows from it. So this love is defined as this really deep, profound affection. It's about treasuring Jesus above everything else. It means you delight in him, you're satisfied by him, and you find him more valuable than your job, your friends, even your own family. It's an affection that completely changes you from the inside out. Okay, but that leads to a pretty obvious question, right? If that's the standard, this all-consuming transformative love, where on earth does it come from? A person can't just grit their teeth and decide to feel that way. So how does it happen? Well, the source points to this incredible story. You've got this religious leader, Simon, who invites Jesus to dinner, but shows him zero affection. And then you have this sinful woman who comes in just overcome with emotion, weeping on Jesus' feet. And to explain the difference, Jesus tells a quick story. Two people owe money. One owes a fortune, the other not so much. Both debts are canceled. Who's going to be more grateful, more full of love? The answer's obvious, right? The one who was forgiven more. And that's the whole point of the argument. This kind of supreme affection for Jesus isn't something you can just work up on your own. It bursts out of you when you are absolutely stunned, gripped, and overwhelmed by the sheer size of the debt you've been forgiven. Great love is born from a deep, personal sense of great grace. All right, let's bring this all home with our final and most critical question. We've talked about the relationship, the nature, and the source of this love. But just how important is it really? What's ultimately at stake? The Apostle Paul puts it, well, about as bluntly as you possibly can. This isn't a secondary issue or a matter of personal preference. Whether or not you have this deep affection for Jesus is presented as something with eternal consequences. That shows you just how central this is. And that brings us right back to what Jesus himself said. If he isn't your supreme treasure, if you value your own kids more than him, then in his own words, you are not worthy of me. But what does that really mean? Now, this is a really, really important clarification. The source makes it crystal clear that being worthy has nothing to do with earning or deserving Jesus. Nobody can. Instead, it means being suitable for him. It means when he is your supreme treasure, you fit with him. Your heart is finally aligned with reality. So here it is, the bottom line. The ultimate argument is that Christianity, at its very core, isn't fundamentally about making decisions or following rules. Those things are important, but they come later. First and foremost, it is about a deep, internal transformation of what you treasure most. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought to just sit with. Forget theology for a second and just think about our own lives. What does it truly mean to treasure something, or someone, above everything else?